Gale Force getting a 3-1 victory over Tempo Storm sets them up very nicely as they continue to try to ramp up and make sure they're in a great place to qualify for our HGC finals at BlizzCon. But now we are moving on to another series, and that series is between two of the maybe best performing teams of last weekend.
Probably the best performing teams, and that is going to be Lag Force and Roll20. Both of them in week number 1 of Phase 2 came out just looking like a new and improved version. Granted, you know, those are still power levels very different from one another.
Right.
Lag Force still clawing out of the Crucible, while Roll20's, you know, they're putting a pretty good argument to be the best team in North America.
Let's check out the standings and see exactly where both of these teams currently sit. Meanwhile, Gale Force with the win over Tempo Storm, 8-1 now, looking very nice up at the top. But we're looking now at Roll20. They are just underneath them. They started out this part in 4th place, but really close. Again, all of our top 5 teams were all very close in the standings, and in their 2 victories moved up to 2nd place, and now they want to challenge even further and get their 7th win. Lag Force, yes, they are out of the Crucible range for now. That comes down to Superstars versus Even in Death later on. But if Lag Force can upset any other teams, or even just look to take games off of other teams, things look really good for them to continue staying out of Crucible range and keeping Superstars and Even in Death just underneath them.
And it should be noted, too, for everybody at home, looking at those standings, you know, that version of the standings is slightly different than almost every other, especially when looking at the top, because the game sample size is just slightly different. That was done purely to benefit the teams whenever they're scrimming at home, and so that essentially it makes our every 2-week pit stop a little bit less conclusive, at least when looking at the numbers directly. But ultimately, right there, that's why we see, you know, between our 2nd and 3rd, Team Freedom literally doesn't have mathematically the even chance to compete with Roll20. At least not yet. They will by the end of it all.
Yeah, normally it is every 2 weeks where teams line up with the same amount of games or same amount of series that they've played. But it's not going to be like that this part. So hang in there. We will know by week number 4, everyone will have the exact same number of series played. Then we can have a very good idea who looks in a great place for the HGC finals, who looks like they'll probably be going to the Crucible. But let's get this series started. We've got Roll20 taking on Lag Force.
We kind of said, like, well, we're gonna have to try harder if you want to make it to BlizzCon, so this is our last stand kind of thing. So I feel like everybody's finally trying their hardest so we can actually have a chance to make it. In regards to Roll20, we feel like they're probably one of the better meta teams in the game because they either build their own meta or they know what the meta is better than most other players. So we feel like if we just learn how they play and try to counter what they do, we should be able to beat them.
Lag Force has a couple cheesy picks like Zagara, and then they also rely on Abathur a lot just to carry them through games. Just because I feel like they're weaker in team fighting, and their drafting is weaker overall, so they need to rely on those kind of like global soaking things to make the games a lot easier for them. I think we're just preparing in general, because last week was the hardest week that we're going to have for this split, so at the moment we're just preparing general things, just practicing as normal, nothing specific for those teams. I think against Lag Force, their role swapping is still a bit weird. They have B-Kid playing ranged heroes sometimes, or like split pushers, and he doesn't look very comfortable on it, so I think that's something that we could take advantage of.
Roll20 looking to see if they can find any holes in the strategy of Lag Force. Lag Force came in last weekend with a big change up in play. We had already seen the role swaps. They were at the end of part 1, but the big change ups were all about picking very macro focused heroes. They were playing Abathur or Zagara, sometimes even both in the same game. And whereas that's been a strategy that they have tried to employ in the past, you can see that this time it's working better for them than it ever has before. It's not perfect, but they're finally being able to try to control the battleground over their opponents.
I feel like this is going to be a really good example of, you know, how good actually is Lag Force against a team like Roll20, because a lot of that, you know, they're playing slower play styles. They're trying to play for a little bit safer play style, and safer doesn't always necessarily mean better. And I feel like Roll20 is going to be a team that, if anyone is going to flaunt off, you know, and flex whenever some team's getting a bit too much out of a situation, suddenly see punishment, and then maybe some of the habits that have been built out of Lag Force out of last week look, you know, not as convincing in this week and a more formidable opponent.
Yes. Superstars versus Lag Force went all the way to game number 5. It was very close between those two teams, but Lag Force defeating them meant that they broke the head-to-head that Superstars had over them, with Superstars defeating them in part 1. So when we look at things like tiebreakers, things like individual games that these teams are able to get over other teams, even if they can't win the series, those matter. Let's check out a tweet, though, before we get into this series, because you guys have been talking to us from home. Silent by Encore. Come on, Roll20, another 3-0 this weekend for Buds' birthday today. Happy birthday, Buds.
Happy birthday, Buds. You know, I wish I could throw you out a virtual cake, but we all know the cake's a lie, so it's okay.
We'll give him a cupcake instead.
You know,
are cupcakes just as lying? Are they as deceitful?
Are they cup lies? That's the real question at hand. I mean, a cupcake is a cup version of a cake. It's just a baby, you know?
Mini lies.
So it's
lies.
It's a white lie. That's what it is.
Nailed it.
We learned. Oh, my goodness. All along, that's what they've been feeding. Feeding all the people, the sheeple. Wake up, sheeple. Today's the day.
This took a weird turn. I think it's time for the battleground pool. We can't save this one.
No recovering. Roll20's taking us to Infernal Shrines for game 1. Lag Force has got to be a little bit scared, considering that Infernal Shrines has been one of the best maps for Roll20 since the beginning of time. Also, the fact that Lag Force's favorite map, Battlefield of Eternity, is the second favorite map of Roll20 is a little bit scary too. So already, you know, we're looking like those two maps go to Roll20, so you're going to have to get anything and everything you can get away from those two if you are a Lag Force fan.
The one thing that Lag Force at least did prove in their match versus Superstars is that Battlefield of Eternity does not have to be a necessary win to take a series anymore. Yeah, it's a favorite of theirs, but they lost to Superstars, but they were still able to beat Superstars on Dragonshire. Cursed Hollow has been another favorite for Lag Force. So with the adjustments, the changes in drafting for them in roles, also seems to be coming in a change in favorite battlegrounds. And we'll see if that has continued into this series. But for now, the first battleground was chosen by Roll20. It is Infernal Shrines. That was a place where Lag Force lost to Superstars. It's also a place where they played Medivh. And I wondered if we would see even more Medivh focus between these two teams than between Lag Force and Superstars, where it was very highly contested.
So what do we see as that first pick for Lag Force then? The Genji ban is standard. Tassadar is going to be the lock-in for them in that first slot role. It's not honestly that wild, but I did want to know, is it going to be the Dahaka versus the Tassadar? Also, we have to consider Abathur. It is a slower map, a larger map.
The fact that this is an instant Uther Garrosh, I'm just amazed.
That is a good point to bring up. The fact that the synergy between those two has been displayed by Roll20 thoroughly. I think it's going to be Garrosh, but I don't think it's going to be the Uther with it. I'm wrong, it's neither. It's the Uther, and we get ourselves the Chromie instead. So, big impact here. He's got to be asking himself, do I Tracer? Is that the direction we want to move in here? And if they do so, I think that they have to get away with it before that secondary ban phase. I feel like the Chromie into the idea of the Task Tracer is a risk, but I mean, Roll20 confidently picked it up. So I feel like they really are sold that they are okay with that laning matchup or that compositional matchup if it happens.
Pretty sure Bronze Talons would chunk a Tracer.
It does hit
a little bit.
It hits pretty well. It's more of like if she has a Pulse Bomb all-ins me, you have to time out, and then if you have to time out, you're sitting there vulnerable for the second rotation of spells. I view it as more of like that kind of trade-off. At the end of the day, Tracer can typically dodge, and the Bronze Talons does, it adds up. It's nothing to laugh at when your health pool is that low.
But Tracer doesn't offer too much in the way of Shrine Clear, so Lag Force wanted to make sure they could get some heroes for that. They have Lunara, who will have Splintered Spear versus Uther, spread out the poisons, punish him for his long cooldown times for his heals, and they'll get Rhaegar, who can help with Wave Clear and with Shrine Clear.
Lunara was a hero that Lag Force felt comfortable picking up throughout week number 1 quite frequently there. They had a cross pairing that is failing to come to my mind here, and I don't have my notes open. I'm going to bring it up and try and figure it out. I want to say it was like Illidan, but that wasn't the case.
It was in part 1 when Zuna was the melee player.
But now it is something different that's not coming to light. By the way, Garrosh was in fact banned out. It also should be noted that Roll20, this is the first game out of all the games that they have played in part number 2 where they in fact haven't picked up the Garrosh before the secondary ban phase.
Lunara Dahaka.
Dahaka was the synergy. So, with that being said, Dahaka, is that the focal point for the members of Roll20? Nope, Goku instead, he's going to be on that Malthael. Gilly, a Malthael pick over Dahaka. I think we can flat out say NA thinks that Malthael is better than the Dahaka in most cases. Or not, I'm going to take a step back, not better, is into the laning matchup, at least in the 1v1 aspect, higher priority than that. Because, I mean, let's be real here, Dahaka's still got a global, and it's pretty hard to beat that.
He's got it going on. Final two picks is Dahaka, a choice for Lagforce. B-Kid has been so far sticking to Zagara, Dahaka, and Malthael when we see him pick. No Illidan from B-Kid just yet. And we were wondering how far his hero pool goes within this new secondary role. How much time he has been able to adapt a lot of heroes during the break.
Nine seconds left for Lagforce to figure it out. I feel like Roll20 is very patiently waiting as well to see if it's a Zag, and if it is like that, I actually wouldn't put it past a Zera to lock in. Something to just essentially pick on B-Kid off on those side lanes. I feel like that's got to be the thought process here for Roll20. I know we talked about in the interview, Glorong talking about not wanting to face B-Kid Zag. There was also a kind of behind that. And there's the Zeratul to hunt it down. That is exactly what I expected Roll20 to do in this draft, is go, please pick Zagara. I'm going to hunt this girl down all game. She's just dead. Zag versus Zeratul matchup means post 7, Secret in the Dark, she's 100% dead. Even if she gets on her creep, she can't outrun long enough in the long run. She just cannot compete with Zeratul. All her damage is sustained long period of fight. Like, you have to hope that the teleport is down, and even then, you don't have lethal on Zeratul. You just trade well into him. It's just, I'm really scared for Lagforce now. I didn't think that they would do it this early on, honestly, but I after that interview and the way that Glorong kind of worded that, I was like, you know, I don't think that was fear that we heard in his voice. It seemed more, please pick the Zagara.
Maybe a taunting sort of.
Just a little. Yeah, maybe I know. Maybe that was just me. Me and Glorong, we've played in the past. Maybe I just, you know, we're that close. Maybe. That's not the case. No, everybody else got it too. Lagforce still committed though. At the end of the day, I do think that it's sticking to the guns is the way I would put it with that. I do feel like B-Kid moving into that role and talking about the Illidan, it is a really hard character to learn, and I'm not surprised that they feel like that might be out of their arsenal. I'd be willing to say it is, judging by the Zagara coming out in this game as well. It's a tall tale. Before the draft, all the changes, all the other backstory, this was going to be a hard battle. Definitely got worse after the draft.
Well, let's see how the Zagara, again for Lagforce, will work out against an enemy as formidable as Roll20.
But we already talked about this in the first series. It's the Protoss versus the Zerg, and we're on the Protoss side of this battle, right?
Of course.
Goku is on the Malthael. ETC is going to be played by Justing. We have Prismat on his Chromie, the original Chromie of North America, how I feel about it there. Uther is going to be played by Buds, and as always, we missed it. Zeratul, played by Glorong.
Their opponents with 2 victories last weekend. Can they beat Roll20? We've got Zuna playing Muradin, big impact on Lunara. Tomster, new-ish support player, playing Rhaegar. B-Kid on his Zagara, and finally, iDream will be rounding it out on Tassadar.
Weird Snapple thought here, but it's currently the only thing my brain can think of. Do you think Glorong still runs the Wonder ability on Zeratul? Because back in the day when the Shimmer actually displayed your mount size, that was the go-to mount for all stealthies? Or he just does it because he thinks it's a superior mount?
Maybe he's paying respects.
To a time of old. To a time of old? That could be the case.
The mount version of pressing F.
I don't know. It's embarrassing to admit, but sometimes that is the only thought that can come to my brain. Like, we started this game, I saw that, and I was like, I'm going to have to think of something clever in 10 seconds that's more important and more relevant than this. And after probably 5 minutes of, you know, being sad at myself, I eventually accepted that that's all this brain can come up with.
You accepted your fate.
It was just the Wonder Billy conversation. That's how we're starting this.
Dread doesn't count sheep when he goes to sleep. He counts Wonder Billies.
What was that? Oh,
that's the Wonder Billy sound.
You nailed it. I think you did a great job.
Was that better than my Chromie impression?
I think your Chromie was better.
I would certainly hope so, Dred.
Gilly.
You answered correctly.
Nice Storm Bolt. It's going to be enough to get the kill. First blood over the members of Lag Force here. Catching out of Chromie, it's got to be something we keep our eye on for the rest of the game here. Also, one thing I want to be talking about is the fact that this is the Zag Lunara double support with that Tassadar and Rhaegar. Granted, it is not a full double support in the same way we've known in the past, but the odds of this being a not Leaping Strike. What am I thinking of here?
Thornwood
Vine. Yeah, for some reason that was impossible to think of. To being a Thornwood Vine's pretty heavy. Lag Force has been a team comfortable moving into that for a long while. Zag and Lunara, both about nearly almost close to worst case scenario in terms of heroes I would list as wanting a Zeratul to dive on top of them. So I really feel like Lag Force, even though in the past they have been able to get away with this Thornwood Vine venturing outward and risking it. Granted, we see other parts of the world do it, but I can tell you why they do it and why Lag Force is not doing it in the same manner. So I hope to see this being a Leaping Strike, and if it's not, I expect Glorung to have even more of an impact here on this in this game, on Infernal Shrines.
Well, Tassadar is going to help with that. He went for Kala's Light over Kala's Embrace, so he will be able to give some armor when Zeratul goes in for the target with that burst. I'm surprised to see Lag focusing so much on the Shrine. I figured that they would want to try to open up early on by taking out some forts or at least some front walls, just so they can get more out of that Zagara, especially once she gets to 10 and starts getting Nidus Network. But they're keeping up so far. They didn't lose anybody. They have Zuna taking the brunt of the damage, and he can be shielded, he can be healed up, and of course he has second wind to heal himself up, even third wind, getting that at level 1.
It's a really good rotation from the members of Roll20. Goku came down, and he showed up only for 5 skeletal defenders, but it was the 5 that mattered. It was the 30 versus 30. Is B-Kid going to match me into rotations? The answer was no. Now Glorung finds his way up towards top, teleports in, go ahead and Vorpal away. That is now a kill on the side of Roll20. Goku's in a bad spot, but he's got the self-sustain necessary off of the minion wave, and the Punisher on bottom doing a bit of work here for the members of Roll20.
Love that Roll20 rotated Zeratul up. It's an early Punisher, so it's not going to be able to get a whole lot done. Expecting more than that front wall, unless you have a very heavy sieging composition, is just not really in the cards. So rotating up instead, finally they did get B-Kid to step out just enough that Zeratul could help make sure that they got the kill, and they still had enough to open up that fort, take out the towers, and start getting an experience and structural advantage over Lag Force.
We are seeing a situation where Uther's second-guessing what level 7 he wants to move into. Another argument where, you know, with the nerfs going into Guardian of the Ancient King with ETC being available, I agree with the selection. They go with the Hand of Protection there. Opportunity to be able to pre-cleanse a mosh pit. I mean, you have a Void Prison to set it up. On top of that, it is very likely that there is a Dream Mosh combo in this game, and they're going to have the tools now with Buds picking that up.
Yeah, they're really just is not a whole lot of anything to proc Guardian of the Ancient Kings anyway.
You know,
it's
now that you word
it, advantageous just to take Hand of Protection, and then if you've got the Rogue Stormbolt or maybe a Leaping Strike Slow, even though that is really short, follow-up Crippling Spores maybe from the additional slows just to make sure that they can get out. There's just not a whole lot, yeah.
Now that you word it that way, I mean, yeah, you're right, but I also feel like I just wanted to get it across because Hand of Protection, I just feel like is a bit underestimated, you know, in terms of a talent. It is a better version of Cleanse, and it seems to be completely ignored. I mean, don't get me wrong, Guardian of the Ancient King is dope, but now it has finally reached what I'm going to call human levels, to where there is a moment where you will see the wild Hand of Protection pop in here and there for those high, long, single-target channeled spells.
Dred, do you think we're going to have a Force Wall or an Archon?
I'm assuming it's going to be a Force Wall. I hope it's going to be a Force Wall.
Me too.
If it's not, I don't see any world where Lag Force gets those fights the way that they want, unless they're going Devouring Maw, which I don't think is going to be the choice.
Yeah, it hasn't been so far. We've got Slowing Sands, but a Cleanse gets Zuna out. The Shrine activating soon, but Roll20 is borderline heroic abilities.
Lag Force can't do this at all. They have to give this up.
Yeah, they can try to push elsewhere there, though. They're just now starting to send Muradin away, keeping Rhaegar and Lunara up in the top lane to deal with the Shaman camp that's coming in, clear that out as fast as they can so that there's no additional damage done to the structures for the inevitable Punisher that is going to follow.
Lag Force, with the Zagara coming up here and there, call me crazy, I might be wrong about this, and it's just going to be, Infest got nerfed 3 times, I want to say, after its initial iteration in the Zagara rework. And then after that, she's seen very little play, but other than like Baneling build on maps where you can expect the Baneling to gain effect, have you seen it still consistently taken over Infest?
I think so.
I just find it very strange to predict that that is going to outweigh the benefits of an Infest, even not even getting all the value out of it, because minions, they need like 3 autos. Hold on, the chain CC is going to be too real here up on top. It forces a cleanse and Avatar. There's going to be a Void. This
is fairly pretty good. Zunas can start his healing back up. Oh, but with a Divine Shield and Tormented Souls getting onto Big E, and the collapse catching Tassadar, Roll20 will still be able to win the team fight, even though initially not being able to get somebody out of the Void Prison. The Dragon's Breath chunks out some of B-Kid's health bar. Lagaf's still trying to stay here. They're falling further behind in Skeletal Defenders, though.
They have to get the Skeletal Defenders if they're not going to forfeit this over. They're going to move in. Keep in mind, this is a man down and down a chance to get this Punisher. Zuna takes the Ancestral, but it gets no value thanks to the Mouthtail. The Mosh Pit is used, and that leads to 2 kills here for Roll20. A full health Punisher on top of it. They're going to be able to open up this map just fine, Gilly.
Big E, B-Kid doing a lot of damage to this Punisher before Roll20 can open up the front door and walk right into the base of Black Force. It's now gotten to a point, though, where Lagaf needs to collapse, concede, allow the members of Roll20 to take out that fort.
Roll20 is going to be closing in on the 13 talent tier, and now Lag Force is at the stage of the game where we have to be starting to look at which fights are realistic for them. Which ones can they be taken, which ones can't they? And to be frank here, it feels like the only window is got to be with that, it's going to be 15 to 13, which is so very common and so frequent, but they don't have a composition that I think can justify that. I personally feel like they might have to wait all the way up until a 20, like a 20 into 22, using the Zag like that far into the late game. With the double backline comp that they have, I just don't see a world where between Chromie, Zeratul, and Mouthtail, all the heroics being used, somebody's dying. There aren't enough anti-team fighting tools on the side of Lag Force. No self-sustain between that double dependent backliner that they have ended up drafting here. I know you gave me the stink eye when I suggested that time window, but I'm honest.
I just don't think they're going to get to that time window. That's why I gave you the stink eye. I think they're going to have to take a fight earlier than that, and pre-16 is the first opening to try to get to 13 and then find something there. There will be a shrine around there. I wish that with the Zagara, they had focused on taking out some structures earlier on so that she could try to get more done. But frankly, Roll20 has sort of called the bluff of Lag Force. They have a Zagara who is terrified of a Mouthtail and a Zeratul because early on they were able to get a pick on her. So she doesn't feel confident to step out on the map as long as Zeratul is not showing. And the members of Roll20 are so confident in their teamfight capabilities that they're just leaving Mouthtail versus her, which makes it even scarier for her to push and get anything done. So where Lag Force maybe was hoping for a 4v5 up on the shrine, Roll20 just isn't overcommitting to those shrines, and Zagara never has a chance really to do anything in this game.
Which is, I mean, you're not wrong. You are completely correct on every angle of that. And now it sits down to a situation to where you're banking on your opponent essentially to make a huge mistake, which is what we're waiting to see if the members of Roll20 will make. Currently, debatably making one, and the fact that Zeratul is showing himself up on top, and now Roll20 has to play passive. They are doing so here as you see them retreating. But Lag Force, they're 13. The Skeletal Defenders are online, and they're not moving up to zone away. It's dead even on this race, and now Glorong is getting a flank.
There's the Shark in.
Oh, big impact. Not like this.
I've been able to reveal him yet. He's got the shield. Goku goes in the middle of all the members, separating out Zuna and iDream. But both of them are A-okay for now. Void Prison catches 3, but they'll be able to come out of this. Unfortunately, it might be on top of the mosh pit, but the perfect stun! The perfect stun stops Justing. It does set it though on a 10-second cooldown, so it'll be back up in a few.
Yeah, and now the 16 is going to be closing relatively quickly for the members of Roll20. It's all about those skeletal defenders though, as LagForce sits ahead in that race.
Yeah, they need to stay ahead in that. They need this Punisher because it gives them time to get 16. Singularity Spike has blown up on Big E.
35 and counting. LagForce looks like they've got themselves the Punisher, but they will not be able to siege with it because the 16 is so quick for the members of Roll20 here. And we have to remember the fact that we're even in this situation is due to a less than optimal initiation out of the members of Roll20.
This is a slowdown of Roll20, but LagForce will power on in, getting a stun on Prismaticism, who did not take time out, unlike the Chromie that we saw in our earlier series. We've got reaching through time, which puts her in a better position, but does mean that she could be vulnerable to a dive.
Larong went in to be able to try and start the fight. Justing actually getting picked off there and going down. So now there's a man up. The members of LagForce trying to get a force, and they kicked with Glorong, but the Divine Shield's used. The return punishment is there at the end of the day. Glorong and Goku going down.
Tomster though?
No way, he's a legend.
He lasted for so long.
How?
It's a 2 for 2.
What? How are Malthael's healing as much as they are today? I feel like every Malthael is healing 3 times as much. Am I? Hello?
Well, we did have, I think we've had Soul Collector at some point. But at least this one, he's got Soul Collector, so he gets it more often.
I can't tell if that's the thing separating it. I don't, just every Malthael in every 2v2, 3v3 is just by the last tick of HP been holding on to every single skirmish, it seems like, throughout this game.
No one can stop death, you know?
No one can stop death. With bottom fort death for LagForce. They have at least a structure. I mean, the level disadvantage is now only 1.
Yeah,
everything is so much better for them than it was just a few seconds ago.
Yeah, it was massive. Massive. They're in the position they are right now.
But it does feel a bit like that was more Roll20, specifically Justing, and him going down and getting caught there was part of the reason they were able to make that happen. The initiation goes, Justing gets rebutted on, taking a bit of damage there. Both the frontliners sitting at 50%.
Zuna's been doing a great job of keeping an eye on Justing, making sure that he is out of the line of fire for Mosh Pit, so we can stun it out. There's not a whole lot that can be able to stop that, so he's doing his job.
Camp up on top. It's not going to be timed with any major objective, though. Those are the small things that I feel like LagForce need to be. Hold on a minute. Catching Prismat could be another thing. Not so small, though. Yes, it is in the shape of Chromie.
Yeah, she doesn't have timeout. She didn't have bye-bye, but she did survive.
Now
Goku's going to go in the back line, though.
He's trying to make things happen. Zuna gets a Dwarf Toss away. Cleanse, or excuse me, Inevitable End, in fact, was used there from Roll20. So that's going to be one cooldown that maybe they need for themselves over the next fight. The biggest thing to keep in mind, though, is the fact Divine Shield, Mosh Pit, and Void's Prison are not used. Those are huge team fighting tools that the members of Roll20 have on their side. And as long as they're available, any team fight could, in fact, be theirs.
Another Shrine activating in just a few seconds as Roll20 activate it.
Zach displays herself on bottom once more.
That is really, it's nice news for LagForce that the Shrine is so far away, because she still has some creeps, she can Nidus back up, but it allows her to push in the one place where fort is down. Power slide in. Zuna, the only person who can stop Justing from getting the Mosh Pit to win the game.
But Glorong had a really unfavorable trade into Big Impact, which has forced the Void Prison there. Zuna takes a little bit of damage after it's dropped. Power slide from Justing goes in, the Mosh Pit hitting 1, but the cleanse is there. Zuna's the first to end up going down here. So the members of LagForce second-guessing Ancestral mixed with that dimensional shift, not necessarily the timing you would want. Perfect Divine Shield, Goku going in.
Look at the poisons! Look at the poisons! Singularity Spike missed. Tomster dodges it. He makes it out by the skin of his teeth. Uther, Ghost gone. Zeratul gone. No Tormented Souls for a few seconds. Goku staying on top now has to try to manipulate his way out of a horrible situation and is unable to do so with the last auto attack of Lunara bringing him down.
Lag Force just won that team fight. And
when they lost Zuna at the start.
Somehow, yeah, it's almost dominant fashion, kind of. It's kind of hard to explain what we just experienced, but the biggest thing here is the fact that they have a major objective that claim for their own. I mean, look at that. That was just all the poison damage mixed with Zag for those long sustaining team fights. They didn't have the tools to be able to deal with it. And with Zeratul having such an unfavorable trade early on and forcing the Void.
The Void and Mosh Pit didn't catch a lot of people either.
It only hit one and it actually got cleansed away.
Yeah, Lag Force, amazing job in being able to get those kills. But it did fall down to some of the heroic abilities being forced from that, and then Lag Force with the area damage, the splash damage of Tassadar, and then the area damage from the poisons of Lunara. Uther is having a hard time keeping up. And this has been a classic, right? To see Lunara picked into Uther because of this. And she only gets stronger in her poisons the longer the game goes on. But where we were wondering if we were going to get to 20 because Roll20 looks so dominant in the early game, we are not only there, but Lag Force are going to get it first.
It's going to be close, but it is very likely that they'll be able to do so after this top turret goes down. The biggest thing we have to highlight, though, is if the 20 spike hits for Roll20, Glarung is going to have Rewind. And when that goes down, it is very likely he has the opportunity to secure a kill for himself on one of those squishy backliners we've been concerned with. The Zag, if she was unable to get side soak and split pressure before, she definitely cannot do so once that is available for the Zeratul. But Glarung, you know, can't have the same opening into that into the team fight as he did his last one. Otherwise, the members of Lag Force will be successful. We talked about what we assumed these fights would go down, but without having enough, specifically starting as early as that Void Prison on bottom that happened over a fort that you know they didn't want to fight. From that point on, Glarung has not had the performance on the Zeratul that he needed to scare the members of Lag Force away.
Force Wrath's going to give big impact and even easier time, making sure that he can stay within a safe range. He's been playing very safely. We've got Torbus, went ahead and selected that, even though a lot of times you'll see level 20 be held for ETC players.
I feel like the only reason he can get away with that is because he has a Zeratul and an Uther on his team that are like the best of both worlds of death metal. You can stop the death from getting the Divine Shield, and then you prep it by having the Mosh Pit. Glarung found himself a V-Kit, but it's going to be baited. There are a lot of people down here. That's one teleport. Rewind, expect a second.
Still got the poisons.
Not even needed. Glarung is dead. So that situation I was talking about actually gets baited and then punishes Glarung for thinking he's going to get that laning mismatch into the Zagara. And now Lag Force clearly having the upper hand. They're going to have a 20-second time advantage when looking at the actual Immortal itself, or the Punisher.
They're heading for top. Got the slowing sands. Anderhole Anomaly is going to slow this down even more as almost every time trap is popped. They don't get the keep. They rotated up. This did pull them all the way up from where the shrine is going to be. But it's still 20 seconds without Zeratul and without Void Prison.
They're sitting around here like they think this is the end of the game. So that, to me, says that Roll20 wants to take this fight. Good dodge there from Goku from that Stormbolt. The trap hit by Zuna.
Do not follow Roll20 into that choke. That is Mosh heaven right there. You talk about the holy cow.
Goku getting the flank. Zeratul still just spawned. He's not here looking to join yet. 32 skeletal defenders and counting for Lag F. They're going to get another Punisher here for bottom.
How do they play this out? Where does Zagara go? She's going to start with getting a minion or a mercenary camp for the top or for the mid. Zeratul immediately goes to push back top, hanging out there, making sure that Zagara is not going to be there. That would be the thought that she would go there, but instead she played it safe and went and got a mercenary camp first. Turning into a Nidus network. She's showing up here. Full 5-man push for Lag Force in the bottom lane.
It's getting baited towards mid for now. Zuna's taking a bit of damage from the keep. You see them getting aggressive. Zeratul is going to drop himself. There's going to be the mosh.
Turbo!
The Turbo's value here, justing with a full 5-man. Goku's Tormented Souls. I mean, good night, Lag Force. Not much else to say. I mean, it was just textbook what you expect from the synergies of those heroics, of the teamwork of Roll20, and that was game.
Yes, please. Let's watch this one again. The 4-man, drop the mosh, go. It actually nearly got jumped on from the Punisher.
I wasn't going to say that.
Oh my gosh.
It was about a half second away from being a not so highlight reel.
But it is. There's only Rhaegar, one lone Rhaegar trying to stop the onslaught of Roll20 as they take out a keep and are posturing for the setup at core. Now there's no Void Prison, there's no Mosh Pit, but there's still 10 seconds before the next person's even out. The Blue Tacitor to try to provide extra shielding, it gives some time, but it's Roll20 still on the core.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any way they're going to be able to stop it. 50 and counting. Roll20 takes game number 1 here against Lag Force, but it was much closer than expected, maybe up until that last initiation from the members of Roll20. I think I walk away from that game far more pleasantly surprised from Lag Force than that of Roll20, without a doubt at the end of that. That last team fight, I mean, clumping like that with a sieging, I mean, that's what Zeratul does. Like, I feel like that's one of those cases where you just go, I mean, you say it's a scrub mistake, and it kind of is, but it's like one of those, it's one of the basics you should have, like, this should never happen. But at the same time, you're like, I get why this happened in this case. And so you just go, okay, we can't let this keep going through, but we did a lot of really good things throughout that game. The fact that it even made it to 20, I think is still a huge moment for them. It is still scary, though, losing a map on Infernal Shrines because LagF has been comfortable there. BOE, we talked about the laning situation with those going forward. But at the end of the day, if I'm Lag Force, I'm like, I'm looking for game number 2. I'm like, our odds of winning this series, at least taking a game a lot higher. And even the series, I feel like it's not out of the realm after that last game. I'm not so impressed for Roll20.
Yeah, for Roll20, I think their takeaway should be, we heard from Prismaticism that they didn't really think too much of the team fighting of Lag Force. And it is obvious that Lag Force still maintains whatever dominance that we knew for a long time for them to be specifically in team fighting. That is still there, and it needs to be respected, because there were multiple times when things went really right for Lag Force when they were behind, just because they knew where they needed to team fight, and they were not afraid to get right back into the fight, catching them up, getting the first keep. I think they got the first keep, right? You got top.
No, that was
didn't.
actually no. I went the other way. Sad day.
Nearly getting the first keep.
We can just bend the rules, though. That's how it works, right? We can just say that things happen in order to justify our points. That's what happens when you're the all-knowing voice that is, in fact, Dreadnought and Gillyweed up here. You know, we just say it as fact, boys.
And so it shall be. They got the keep.